It's a beautiful day. It's a beautiful day, not only because it's NFL free agency, but in New York, it's like 69 degrees today. What an unbelievable day I'm having so far. Now, if you just bear with me, if you're joining in right away, I just want to make sure that my bearings are in order here when it comes to the lives and everything like that. I want to just make sure. I don't know how I'm such a grandpa when it comes to this stuff, man. I'm trying to see if I could make everything look nice. I think I might have to do it like right here. So you guys are gonna watch me actually do it right here in front of you guys. I don't know. I'm not new to the streaming game, but like it's difficult for me to do this kind of stuff. I don't know what the heck I'm doing for the most part. Great thumbnail by Broshimo there. That's awesome. But yeah, I just want to update this really quick. And then, of course, we'll get into some of free agency that's been really awesome so far today. Unbelievable signings all the way around. And it's so funny because, you know, I feel like it just hasn't really been like we don't really have the free agents this year. Like it's a relatively light free agent class. And still, yeah, let's by the way, crazy that it goes like straight to that. Just crazy. And wow, why that uh the way that you have to YouTube has to kind of update the way that you like have to do that. I mean, I'm sure that there's a way that you can do this that I just don't know how to do it, but either way, it's definitely a trip. But free agency's been fantastic so far. This is like the best time of the year, honestly. And I was talking to a coworker earlier today, saying to myself that if the NFL really wanted to capitalize off of just the overall like buzz and everything, they should just make the start of the league year the day after the Super Bowl should be the start of the league year. Again, everyone that's coming in, just bear with me for 2 seconds. I'm just trying to fix up the way that this all looks and all that. So I said, just bear with me here as I'm trying to. So you're getting an inside scoop on how I like get my videos ready. Essentially, what I'm doing right in front of you guys right now is basically the way that I just do all of that anyway. So there we go. Should be good. And then let's update this. We will save it and we will update it. So it looks a little bit better than just literally the Pornhub logo over what I have. So there you have it. Let's go. Looks pretty good. Did it save? I'm going to assume it did. I'm going to open it up on my YouTube app here and assume that it did just to make sure. Yes, it looks like it has. But yeah, free agency, guys. Free agency. Big time good day here. Big time. I'm really excited about it. And like I said, for people that are just joining in right now, it's a beautiful day in New York. I have all my windows open in my co-op right now. This is great. I'm not cold. I work outside, so I'm in the elements all the time. Giants should have signed Tyler Linderbaum. Yeah, I absolutely agree with that, Sean. But I mean, hey, I don't know if the Giants were, willing to put up the amount of coin that the Raiders were. I mean, we're gonna go through all this kind of stuff. I have it ready to go. Here we go, right here, and we're finally gonna start talking about it here. But I want to, kind of go through everything that we've seen so far up until this point. But 3 years, $81 million for Linderbaum is such an unbelievable thing for him because he's what 25, 26. Even let's say he's 26 years old. He's probably 25, but you say he is. Yeah, he's absolutely worth it, 100%. But let's say he's 25 years old. You sign a 3-year contract. You make a bag at $81 million. And then you're 28 or turning 29 years old as one of the top, if not the top centers in the NFL. And you can sign another huge contract. By then, who knows? If he reset the market at 3 years, $81 million, who knows how much money he's going to be making, in 3 years' time. It could be $40 million a year for a center at that point. So I mean, I think all the way around, I think Linderbaum going to the Raiders is an excellent decision just based off of how much money that he's going to be able to make and the fact that he could sign another huge contract when this one is over or even a huge extension. So we'll see. But I mean, great job by the Raiders organization so far. Let's actually talk about let's scroll down to the Raiders organization because we're talking about it right now, and I feel like we should kind of look at it a little bit more. But they've done work. I mean, I think Eric Stokes was a fantastic re-sign because Stokes was a player that really kind of reinvented himself in Las Vegas this past year after a not great stint with the Green Bay Packers to start his career. They kind of took a chance on him, and the Raiders, kind of paid dividends. And even at a 3-year, $30 million deal, 20 million guaranteed over 3 years, even if he turns out to go back and he's not great, I mean, the fact of the matter is that's a fantastic, long term-ish, short, midterm signing for the Las Vegas Raiders. Taron Johnson was a nice little trade too, as well. I mean, why not? He was going to hit the open market, but I doubt that he was going to sign with the Raiders. So they get more secondary help there. Jalen Naylor is a nice third wide receiver option as well. I'm thinking that the Raiders are going to wind up taking some kind of wide receiver at some point, early-ish on in the draft. I'm thinking at 14. At this point, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to form a mega offensive line because the way that it's configured right now, let's just run through the Raiders offensive line right now. So you have Colton Miller on the left side. Since you signed Tyler Linderbaum, you have Jackson Powers Johnson as your left guard. Center is obviously Tyler Linderbaum. Right guard is going to be Caleb Rogers. And then right tackle could either be Charles Grant. It could either be DJ Glaze, or at 14, you could take Spencer Fano potentially. And now you're creating probably a top 5 offensive line in the NFL right away. Fano is going to be excellent at right tackle at the NFL level. I think it would be wise because the offensive line, any position on the offensive line is incredibly volatile. You need to have bodies on the offensive line. We've seen great offensive lines on paper turn to shit because they get injured. I mean, look at the Chargers year in and year out. They always have a pretty decent offensive line on paper. And then Joe Alt or Rashawn Slater gets hurt, and then it's down in the tubes after that. So really, you have to have bodies on the offensive line. And even if you can get Spencer Fano at 14, and you have DJ Glaze, you have Charles Grant that you could play with. You can move around in different positions as well, or even as just good depth. I think it's a great thing. And like I said, Naylor is a nice free agent signing as well. So I'm super happy about what they are able to accomplish so far. I wanted to get into the free agent talk a little bit earlier, but YouTube was kind of disagreeing with me. I had to kind of work a couple things out, unfortunately. So I wanted to go live at about 3:30, but it materialized that around 4 o'clock was when I went. But let's go through some of these teams here. The Chargers, I like what they've done so far to the most part. I mean, $24 million for a blocking tight end is interesting, but you have Gadsden, and Gadsden's going to be a really nice, like, big slot tight end. He is already, but he's going to be more of a focal point at the offense. I'm assuming next year. So you get Kohler, who's been one of the best blocking tight ends in football for the last couple of years, really under the radar. This is if we're looking at this is a very Jim Harbaugh, Los Angeles Chargers style free agent period so far, because you have, Alec Ingold, Charlie Kohler, Tyler Biotish, Teair Tart, Khalil Mack. You're looking at really Mack is probably the sexiest pick pickup, I would say. And he's a re-sign at that point. Everything else is kind of like nitty gritty, run first, defense first. And that's kind of like what it was. And Teair Tart obviously is worth this kind of money. Great player on the defensive line. Biotish gets a little bit of a pay bump. He was released by the Commanders, where I think he was going to make, somewhat of $7.5 million for a season there. And then he goes to, the Chargers, where he's going to make a little bit more. So that's, good in its own right. And Ingold is nice. It looks like they're going to continue to really dive into the run heavy offense there for the Chargers. So I like what they've done so far. The Chiefs, I mean, I'll be honest, I think we all kind of knew that Kenneth Walker was going to be a Chief for the most part. I think we all knew that this is, made the most sense. I think that they got him on a great deal. I think 3 years, up to $45 million and only $28 million guaranteed. So you're getting less than $10 million guaranteed from the previous Super Bowl MVP. I think it's a fantastic move for the Kansas City Chiefs. Travis Kelce, of course, coming back is never going to be a bad thing. Tonga is a really, really nice. They were able to squeeze a lot out of Tonga in New England this past year, and maybe Steve Spagnuolo can unlock a little bit more. But that's a really under the radar signing there. I just got a notification from Adam Schefter that the Packers are releasing two-time Pro Bowler Elton Jenkins. So that's another bigger-ish name to get on the market here as well. So I'm assuming teams that are going to need interior offensive line help are definitely going to, you know, go forward with that. I saw a signing. I want to go to the Browns for a second. I saw a signing by the Browns, Zion Johnson. I mean, I don't like to knock any signings, to be honest with you, because if a player fits in what you're trying to do, then he just fits. That's the fact, that's the way that it goes. But at the same time, I, $50 million a year for Zion Johnson is some absolutely egregious work, if you ask me. I mean, that's a crazy, crazy amount of money for Zion Johnson, who's been very, very mid since he's gotten into the NFL. So I think it's a little, I don't want to say strange, but I think it's a little, disingenuous. I'm assuming there's going to be some interesting. We don't have the total, you know, we don't have the total details of the deal, how much is guaranteed, and all that kind of stuff. But I'll tell you what, I mean, Johnson at 3 years, $50 million. That's quite an egregious amount of money there for that. But yeah, obviously Titus Howard is a little bit of an older deal that we could talk about too. But I love what they can do because Titus Howard is a player that played at left guard for the Houston Texans, also played at right tackle, and he was very, very solid on both sides of the offensive line as well. So, getting him for a 3-year, $63 million contract, I think that's a perfectly fine deal. You could piecemeal him anywhere you want. This is an offensive line that literally has no starters returning for the most part, or presumably no starters returning. So that's going to be, quite an interesting development from them there. The Steelers are kind of sort of early winners of the free agent period. Getting Michael Pittman Jr. after Alec Pierce signed a mega contract extension, 4 years, $116 million with the Indianapolis Colts. Then they traded. You had to figure that Michael Pittman was either going to be a cut candidate at that point or he was going to be, traded. And he was traded a very, very short while after that. He gets re-signed immediately. He gets a contract extension immediately from the Pittsburgh Steelers, and 3 years, $59 million. So one thing that I think is a little bit crazy about it is you're really asking a lot of the receiver position from the Steelers. You're really, really diving a lot of cash into the receiver pool at that point, because what is DK Metcalf getting about, $30 million a year. So you're sinking basically, $50 million into 2 wide receivers for the most part. So, a lot of money there for guys that, can't really separate that well. You think that there has to be some kind of a differentiation in the NFL draft. Are they going to go after a speedster, someone that could open up the middle of the field? I think that that's a type of different dynamic that they need on that side of the ball. So let's see here. I got another update from Adam Schefter just now. It says that, wow, this is a nice one here. This is a nice one. Boye Mafe is in agreement on a 3-year contract with the Cincinnati Bengals. I like that a lot. Case Keenum also is re-signing with the Chicago Bears as their backup. That's good. But Boye Mafe is a really nice addition for the Cincinnati Bengals, who just recently signed. Did they just sign Nick Cross as well? Let's take a look. Brian Cook, that's who it was. I couldn't remember if it was Nick Cross or Brian Cook. So Dalton Reisner was one of the earliest signings. Jalen Davis was a nice, depth signing as well. Brian Cook, really, really nice signing there. Really nice. 3 years, $40 million. And now you add Boye Mafe on that as well. I don't have the details of it just yet, but it is a 3-year contract. So the Bengals are making moves on the defensive side. So I always kind of live by the notion that you should pay offense, draft defense. But the Bengals are such an interesting case because the Bengals year in and year out, I feel like just don't really do, a whole lot on the defensive side. They don't draft well on the defensive side. I feel like their free agent decisions on the defensive side aren't great. So if they're going to plunge a lot more money into the defensive side this year, then all power to them. I think it makes a lot of sense. Moving up to the Baltimore Ravens. So a little bit of a bittersweet type of day for the most part because you lose. They traded Max Crosby, obviously. Uh, they traded for Max Crosby rather, and then you essentially lose Tyler Linderbaum to the same team that you just traded for Max Crosby from. So you lose Linderbaum, which is tough. You gain Max Crosby. You re-sign John Simpson. Well, I shouldn't say re-sign. You sign John Simpson, the team that did draft him. I believe he was a fourth round selection out of Clemson for the Baltimore Ravens. So you gain another guard who's had a very, very solid career for the Jets up until this point. Let's take a look. We have another signing here, and this is a big one. This is nice. The Dallas Cowboys make another addition, this time agreeing to terms with Jalen Thompson on a 3-year, $36 million max deal. Great, great deal for the Dallas Cowboys. If you look into the depth chart and to free agency itself, you'll see that the Dallas Cowboys are left with kind of sort of nothing in the defensive secondary for the most part. So a defensive backfield, I want to say, not defensive secondary, obviously. But yeah, they were left with really nothing. And I think drafting a safety early is probably going to be in, the realm of possibility for them. And, getting someone like Jalen Thompson, who's still only 28 years old, is still playing some really, really good ball. He kind of gets overshadowed he got overshadowed a little bit by Budda Baker, but Jalen Thompson is a great signing for. Let's take a look at the Dallas Cowboys here. Let's go to them because they have certainly made some moves up until this point here. Javonte Williams, yeah. Oh, they did. Second round tender. Yeah. Okay. So obviously Brendan Aubrey is the best kicker in football, in my opinion. You're obviously not getting a second round pick for Brendan Aubrey there. So Rashawn Gary was an interesting trade. Obviously, Javonte Williams was a re-signing that they got done early. George Pickens was on the franchise tag. So I really like another agreement here. We got some pouring in here. You have Adafe Owe, an agreement on a 4-year, $100 million deal with the Washington Commanders. So that, my friends, is a massive overpay for Adafe Owe. Not a bad player, don't get me wrong, but I really think that the positional valuation is kind of all over the place with a lot of these guys. So it's only $68 million guaranteed, which only averages out to $17 million a year. So I guess for an edge rusher, that's not bad at all. But at the same time, I just feel like that's kind of, an insane thing to be doing there, is to be giving out that kind of money. Hopefully it's mostly incentive based, but like I said, 68 million in guaranteed doesn't really look like it's going to be, an overall just 68 million guaranteed. So that's pretty solid, I guess, for them. They desperately needed defensive line upgrades there, but yeah, I just think that's a massive overpay. But let's see, 3 years, 60 million. Who's he talking about here? Which one is that from? That's the Boye Mafe contract. All right, so we have the numbers on that. 3 years, $60 million for Boye Mafe. All right, not too bad. Good for them. That's a decent upgrade for them. But yeah, getting back to some of the other moves that we've seen so far, the Giants signing Isaiah Likely was a likely signing. I know I didn't want to say that, and I apologize in advance for saying something like that. But yeah, he was a likely signing for the most part. 3 years, I feel like 3 years, $40 million. That can be worth up to $47 million. I feel like it's a really nice value signing for the New York Giants. So now you form a really nice 1-2 pairing with Isaiah Likely and Theo Johnson. That's very solid. Tremaine Edmonds is a player that, I think that's a pretty decent signing for them. That John Harbaugh, wherever he goes or whatever team he's coaching that year, is going to want some really good linebacker play or a big time linebacker in his own right. So obviously the last few years it was Roquan Smith. He comes over to the Giants. Bobby Okereke isn't really his cup of tea. So he goes out and he gets an athletic Tremaine Edmonds, who's still only 28 years old at this point. So, the 3-year valuation is at 36 million is pretty solid for an off-ball linebacker, $12 million a year, coming off of a pretty decent season for the Chicago Bears as well. So I like what the Giants are doing so far. I really thought, as Sean reiterated in the live chat, he did say that the Giants should have signed Linderbaum. But again, at that valuation at 3 years, $81 million, that I mean, if you live under a rock and you didn't know that the Las Vegas Raiders were going to take a quarterback at number one overall, I mean, it was obviously apparent now. You're putting all this money into the quarterback position. I mean, the offensive line. You're gonna go out and you're gonna get a quarterback with the number one overall pick. That this is So I guess I missed out on a couple of these here while I was trying to set up the live stream here. Mariota is one I saw. I like that 1 year, $7 million deal. He played very well in Jaden Daniels' absence, in my opinion. Traylon Burks on a 1 year. I think he actually played pretty well down the stretch too. As a first round bust, he kind of found a nice little niche part of the Washington Commanders' overall offense to kind of take. Dietrich Wise resigns, Andrew Wiley resigns. Amik Robertson on a 2 year, $16 million deal. That's really nice because they desperately needed some cornerback help there. And then Tress Way, of course. I believe Tress Way is actually the longest tenured player on an NFL team, if I'm not mistaken. I think he's been on the Commanders for quite some time. And I think I remember the last time I saw the Washington Commanders playing on national TV, I think they did say something about that, about Tress Way. So the Commanders are making moves. They also just signed Odafe Owe, as we just talked about, to a 4 year, $68 million, 4 year, $100 million deal, but it's going to be $68 million in guarantees. So let's scroll a little bit. I'm kind of surprised that the Eagles haven't really done anything up until this point. They're kind of sitting back and watching a lot of these players, kind of pass them by. And I think that Howie Roseman's also being pretty smart in his own right as well, because, every free agency, we're just seeing guys getting overpaid and overpaid. And, the Howie Roseman sticks to his guns. He wins his games. He wins and loses his games with the offensive and defensive line. Trench warfare is Howie Roseman's game. And there's a lot of holes in this overall roster that need to be kind of plugged up for the most part. Safety is a big one. You need more offensive linemen if you're the Philadelphia Eagles. You need some more weapons, because it does seem more and more inevitable as the days and weeks go on that A.J. Brown is probably going to be moved at some point. Isaiah Likely was a target that I thought that they were going to try and go after. Then he goes to a division rival with the New York Football Giants. So the Eagles are kind of chilling right now. Maybe they're looking to re-sign a couple players. Maybe they're looking to re-sign someone like Nakobe Dean, and they need a little bit of the funds for that. So maybe that's what they're holding out on. Maybe they're trying to keep their own in-house, and I understand that fully. So, maybe they want to do that. Maybe they're working on a long-term deal for Reed Blankenship as well. So we don't really know what Howie Roseman is doing right now. He hasn't gone out and signed really any free agents for the most part. But at the same time, the Eagles are still a good organization for the most part. What are your thoughts on James Pierre to Minnesota? I mean, I'll be honest with you. The Minnesota Vikings are a team that, when you look at their overall roster for the most part, it's very barren. It's very bad. So you have your good starters, obviously, but there's not a lot of depth. The depth is razor thin on the defensive line. Linebacker was super thin. I'm glad that they re-signed Eric Wilson, 29 years old, a little bit of a late bloomer, but a 3 year contract, $22 million. That's awesome. James Pierre's a really, really solid signing for them as well, because we've seen the Baltimore. I'm sorry. I was talking about Baltimore for a while. We've seen the Minnesota Vikings take swings, like low risk swings on these backup corners and these guys that carve out nice little roles for themselves on other teams and turn them into really good corners. I mean, look at Isaiah Rodgers last year. He was great for the Minnesota Vikings for a long stretch of the season. So I think that this is a really, really nice signing. We know that Brian Flores just, kind of turns any player into a superstar on the defensive side. He's just got the knack for it. So I think that James Pierre is a player that's going to come and play significant snaps for the Minnesota Vikings and do fairly well for the most part. Agreed. Both cheapest deals for depth, which is really needed. Reminds me of Isaiah Rodgers. Exactly what I said there as well. It really does truly remind me of Isaiah Rodgers, because then when Isaiah Rodgers was thrown into, the starting role, essentially, midway through the season for the most part, he actually did very well. So same thing could happen with James Pierre. Happy for Naylor. I see him doing well with Mendoza. Yeah, absolutely. I think Jalen Naylor actually carved out a really nice season for himself last year for the Minnesota Vikings, and he did cash in on that pretty well. What was that contract again? We just talked about it before, but I did indeed forget. It is not. Oh, it's right here. Sorry. The free agent deal. I think it was what, 3 years, $32 million or something like that. So that's a really solid contract for him. And yeah, that's going to be nice. I don't really know what the Raiders are doing with their wide receiving core. I mean, you have, well, they obviously don't have Jacoby Myers, but they have Dante Thornton, who they drafted last year, who they probably think pretty highly of. They have Jack Besh, who was a second round receiver from last year as well. Now they have Jalen Naylor, they have Trey Tucker. So it's a lot of like weird, like up in the air type of receivers, in my opinion, because you got Naylor, who's like a really, really great wide receiver 3. Then you have Tucker, who's, a great deep threat and probably a really good wide receiver 2. Besh was okay. We saw some glimpse from Jack Besh last year. And then Dante Thornton had a couple of nice catches, but he was inactive for a lot of the games that the Raiders played. So, I don't really know what they're doing. I think what you should do is, especially since you have Ashton Genty and you have Brock Bowers, I think putting as much of a priority on the wide receivers isn't really crazy right now. I don't really need to put like a huge importance on adding a potential wide receiver 1 in the draft this year, or trading for a wide receiver, because you do have weapons. You have complementary weapons at the wide receiver position that you need a true wide receiver 1. But for right now, basically your wide receiver 1 is Brock Bowers. So I don't really know what the Raiders are doing there, but I think fortifying the offensive line should be first and foremost, especially if you are taking a franchise quarterback or a presumed franchise quarterback with your number 1 overall pick. I want to talk about my New York Jets here for a second, because actually, let's talk about the Titans first, because I'm really liking what the Titans are doing here. So, yeah, Mitch Trubisky is obviously one of the better backup quarterbacks in football. 2-year deal. That's fantastic to back up Cam Ward. Wan'Dale Robinson obviously is an excellent pickup for them, in my opinion. They desperately needed upgrades at the wide receiver position. And yeah, 4 years, $78 million might seem like a lot for Wan'Dale Robinson, but he had a really great year last year. He kind of stepped up in the absence of often injured Darius Slayton and Malik Neighbors as well. I love that. Obviously, the trade for Jermaine Johnson, it works out for both teams, for the New York Jets and for the, Tennessee Titans, because you get a piece that fits into the defensive scheme of Robert Saleh, and then you also get, for the Jets, you get T'Vondre Sweat, who is a young run-stuffing defensive tackle on a rookie contract that you absolutely need. John Franklin Myers was the big one here. This was like the worst kept secret in free agency. Yes, you said Titans said F it and let's be the most aggressive team in free agency. Yeah, I mean, and all power to them. I mean, this is great. Look what they've drastically improved their team. Cordell Flott signs. That's a really, really nice addition for them. Alante Taylor is a fantastic addition for them as well. And now this also, allows them to either trade L'Jarius Sneed or release L'Jarius Sneed as well. But getting back to John Franklin Myers, this was the worst kept secret in free agency. We all kind of knew wherever Robert Saleh was going to go, John Franklin Myers was going to sign, but he absolutely gets paid. And that's, and coming from a Jet fan who desperately misses John Franklin Myers on his team, that is a well-deserved $21 million a year. He does all the things that you don't see on the score sheet. He gets pressures as well. He was 8th this past year in pressures from the defensive tackle position as well. He's just a player that consistently performs week in and week out. He's incredibly solid, and I couldn't be more happy for him. Like I said, I really do think that the Tennessee Titans are doing very, very well. They kind of had to go into this free agency period and kind of at least do something. Now, where I'd like to see them improve on the offensive line a little bit more as well, I can't knock what they've done at all so far. I think they've done a really great job. They have, added 2 great players in Cordell Flott and Alante Taylor on for their secondary. They added 2 great players on the defensive line for them. I mean, this is a very low cost, high reward potential trade for the Tennessee Titans, because if Jermaine Johnson, he looks sluggish at times, but he is coming back from an Achilles injury from the year prior. Jermaine Johnson, if he gets back up to speed on basically a 1-year contract at this point, it just makes too much sense. He's a very low risk, high reward type of player for the Tennessee Titans. The Jaguars, interesting up until this point. Nothing crazy on that end. The Indianapolis Colts have made some pretty nice moves for the most part. I mean, I think that the primary objective for the Indianapolis Colts was to really kind of figure out what they were doing with the wide receiver position, because you have to figure it was either one or the other. It's either you're going to, sign Alec Pierce, or you're going to let him walk, and you're going to bring back Michael Pittman Jr. off of this, contract extension, or at the tail end of the contract extension that you gave him, and kind of, let him just, yeah, yeah. I mean, be a possession receiver where you have no deep threat. So bringing back Pierce, I think, was the right move. Yeah, he gets what, $29 million a year, or $28 million a year, whatever it may be. But he is the more athletic, faster, younger of the two. So I think it just makes absolutely perfect sense there. And yeah, Arden Key is good enough, I guess, off the edge. Colby Wooden was really nice. Getting anything in return for Zaire Franklin was great, and Colby Wooden is a really nice addition for them as well. I think they've done fine for the most part. I can't really knock what they've done either. But yeah, moving on, talking about some other teams. Yeah, the Texans have been pretty busy for the most part. Just really a lot of re-signings. I don't think that they've done any, outside of the box signings, but they're keeping the team together. That's pretty important as well. I'm happy with what they've done up until this point. Now you look at we looked at the Steelers, we looked at the Bengals, we talked about basically all the AFC North. We have my New York Jets here, and the day started off really, really solid. Was very, very happy with what I was able to see from the New York Jets early on in the day. And don't get me wrong, I mean, some people are gonna, I don't know how people just love to hate on the Jets, and that's completely fine. But I don't know how you could knock a team trading a 7th-round pick for Minkah Fitzpatrick, regardless of what, regardless of what he did last year. And by the way, he was solid last year as well. So you're not even, for Minkah Fitzpatrick standards, yeah, it was a down year, but he's also someone that is still going to play incredibly solid. He's going to be a veteran presence on the back end of the defense. And let's not forget, the New York Jets, outside of Malachi Moore, had some of the worst safety play in football this past year. So anything that they were able to accomplish today was great. I like what they're doing. See, the Jets are doing what I thought that they were going to do last year. And what I thought they were going to do last year was they were going to, get a few short-term contracts for some veterans that were going to make a difference on the team. And they didn't do that. They kind of held on to their money and said, all right, we're going to kind of punt on this. We're going to pay our guys, and we're going to play good defense with who we have. And that never happened. But I really like what they are doing. Let me just catch up on these comments real quick. I like what the Jets are doing too. Seen that immediately and thought, why the hell didn't we offer the same? Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, and it's an interesting trade from the perspective of the Miami Dolphins, because you're trading a still very good football player to a division rival. And, I know that the Miami Dolphins are really, in tank rebuild mode for the most part, but like, seems like a little bit of a puzzling trade for me from their aspect. But I'm not gonna knock it. 3 years, $40 million extension. I love the fact that you're extending him, because obviously he's going to be a playmaker regardless of his age, regardless of how he regresses. He's still going to be able to make plays on the back end of the defense. So I love Minkah Fitzpatrick. First off, bringing Demario Davis back for the nostalgic factor of that. Now, don't forget, this is Demario Davis's 3rd stint on the New York Jets, by the way. So he was drafted by the Jets. Then he got traded to the Cleveland Browns. He came back to the Jets for a couple of years, and then he signed with I don't remember if they traded him again or they signed him, but he went to the New Orleans Saints, became a fantastic member of the New Orleans Saints, and now he's back basically on the last year of his career, his last year or two on his career. He signed him to a 2-year, $22 million contract. And I really like this, to be honest with you, because the Jets were highly, highly linked to Alex Anzalone. And don't get me wrong, Alex Anzalone, I think, is a solid enough linebacker. But I'll be honest with you, even at 37 years old, I would take Demario Davis over Alex Anzalone. I think that he's just a little bit more of a playmaker. He's more of a leader. He has more of that leader presence that I think this young New York Jets team absolutely needs. And he's going to make plays. So you get Minkah Fitzpatrick, who's a little bit older. You get Demario Davis, who's older. And you get David Onyemata as well, who's a little bit older as well, but that continues to solidify the defensive line, which was atrocious against the run last year. If you guys remember, if you guys our Jets fans or not. I like re-signing Jelani Woods because it gives you that athletic, huge factor if he does decide to play a game or two here for the New York Jets at some point. Brees Hall, obviously under the franchise tag. I'm hoping that they can get a long-term deal done for him. And I like the pick. I like the edge picks here with Kingsley Enagbare and Joseph Osai. What really this all tells me is that the Jets are going to switch over to probably playing an odd front defense because you're adding Enagbare, who's going to be an outside linebacker. You're adding Joseph Osai, who's an outside linebacker. You already have Will McDonald. You need more on the outside. And also adding guys like T'Vondre Sweat and David Onyemata makes me think that we're switching more to a 3-4 personnel. So I love it as well. I talked about the T'Vondre Sweat trade already. I like adding Onyemata as a veteran presence. That's a very, very solid defensive lineman. And Enagbare is a really nice, $10 million on a 1-year contract for a rotational edge rusher. More than fine with me. You have the money. If you have to overspend a little bit, so be it. What it is what it is. You have to get better on the defensive side. There's no excuses for the New York Jets. You have to get better on the defensive side. And so far, they've done a really, really good job. I would love to see them add a wide receiver at some point because obviously the Jets waited way too long last year and they signed Josh Reynolds and they signed Tyler Johnson, and neither of those guys did diddly squat with the Jets last year. And once Garrett Wilson went down with a season-ending injury, that was the saddest passing offense you've ever seen in your life, even after adding Adonai Mitchell and John Mechie through, trades. So let's take a look, see what else we could look at here. The Patriots have been pretty shockingly quiet up until this point. Draymond Jones was a really, really nice signing for them as well. That replaces Tonga on the defensive line and adds a lot more in terms of pass rushing for them. And Reggie Gilliam, that's cool. Maybe that means that signifies the end of Ramondre Stevenson and we're moving fully into the Travion Henderson era. That would be pretty cool to see as well, too. But, we'll see what they do there. A little quiet. And we mentioned the Miami Dolphins before. I think this is really what they were kind of looking for, was that they were going to go into free agency just trying to get a quarterback of the here and the now. And I think getting Malik Willis on a 3-year, $68 million deal with only $45 million guaranteed, I think that's a really, really awesome contract because I've seen some old heads on Twitter kind of say like, oh, well, for the amount of time he's played, that's kind of a crazy overpay. And I would be more inclined to agree. But at the same time, he's a young player who showed unbelievable progress and promise with the Green Bay Packers this past year. And you desperately need a quarterback. And you already ate $99 million in dead cap for Tua Tagovailoa. So, you have to do something. And I think Willis is a player that at the very least, if he comes in 2025 and 2026 and he sucks, at least that this is a very eatable contract for the most part for the next couple of years as well, while you maybe find your quarterback of the future in the 2027 or the 2028 draft. Seeing the Patriots and Eagles been calling about Grenard. I don't see why the Vikings move off of him. Yeah, I personally, I don't see why the Vikings would move off of Jonathan Grenard either. Maybe he is getting a little bit older. Maybe that's the only reason that I could see it. But other than that, I mean, the pass rushing is so barren outside of a couple of guys has Dallas Turner really turned a corner yet at all? I mean, does Brian Flores even like Dallas Turner at this point? We were hoping at this point, Turner would have blossomed into something more than he is. So, I think it's a little, I think it would be a little foolish of them to trade him as well. Let's take a look here. The Bills are a team who's kind of been a big loser today, in my opinion, really for losing David Edwards. And I know that you don't probably want to pay a 29-year-old guard $15 million, but also the Bills have done such a good job recently of keeping the band together in terms of their offensive line. Losing David Edwards was a huge, huge loss for them. And he gets quite a nice payday from the New Orleans Saints as well at I think he's getting a 4-year, $61 million contract. So a really, really nice payday for him as well. But the Bills are a team that I thought were going to do a little bit more. I still think, I mean, they can't really do too much because yet again, they are pretty cash strapped right now. But at the same time, I feel like a big move is coming. I feel like we're going to see something with the Buffalo Bills that, somehow they wind up signing Trey Hendrickson or something like that. Maybe that's what they're holding out on. So let's see. I just got another update here. The Raiders are signing Colts pass rusher Kwity Paye. The deal is $16 million per year. So the Colts are adding a pass rusher. It's a pass rusher. Oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. Tua Tagovailoa is planning on signing a 1-year contract with the Atlanta Falcons. Okay. Interesting for Tua and for the Falcons as I spill my iced tea all over my face. Uh yeah, I mean I guess that's cool. That's probably one of the easier places that he could start right away because who knows if Michael Penix Jr. is going to be available for the beginning of the year. And who knows? That may work for Tua. Yeah, no, I certainly think that it could work for Tua. Absolutely. Like I said, it's probably his easiest path to starting right away, unless he went to like Arizona or something like that. Now, that's another team that I kind of want to talk about. What is Arizona going to do at the quarterback position? I guess Jacoby Brissett is going to be who they are rolling with, but after losing out on Malik Willis, who we thought was going to be heavily linked, I like they signed 2 special teamers, which was pretty funny. I like the Tyler Algier signing, but it's just such a logjam at the running back position. I'm just kind of a little bit confused as what they're doing. But Tua obviously is probably going to sign for the veteran minimum because he has so much money coming his way from the Miami Dolphins. So it works for Tua. I don't know what Arizona is going to do at the quarterback position. Maybe they make a trade for someone. Maybe they just, roll with Jacoby Brissett. I honestly don't know what we're going to see there. So the numbers on the Kwity Paye deal is going to be 3 years, $48 million. And I think that's good. I think Kwity Paye was a solid enough player for the Colts, more of a run defending defensive end than a overall pass rush specialist. But I think he's a really solid player overall. And I think, again, with how much money edge rushers get nowadays, I feel like that's a solid enough contract there. The Rams, of course, just continue to, just win at everything except for winning the Super Bowl recently. I mean, I feel like this is just such a unbelievable get for them in terms of adding Jalen Watson as well. They got Trent McDuffie. They're just turning into the Chiefs of the NFC, I guess. They traded for Trent McDuffie. They gave him a bag. They signed Jalen Watson, but this was the biggest thing on there. Yeah, the Rams are absurdly good. I agree with you 100%. They're such a well-run organization, in my opinion. They have such good, like higher ups. Les Snead is not afraid to go out there, use his draft capital. He's not afraid to use his money. You have Sean McVay, who obviously has such a huge influence in this franchise. I love re-signing Tyler Higbee as well and Cam Curl. That was the biggest one. That kind of set the tone early for what the Los Angeles Rams were going to set out to accomplish in this free agency period, in my opinion. They went out, they got Cam Curl, who was phenomenal for them. Safety was probably the thinnest position on the depth chart for the Rams. So they doubled down, they re-signed Cam Curl. They make sure they at least get their star from last year. They're probably going to wind up drafting a safety at some point, relatively inside the top 100 of the NFL draft. Adding Jalen Watson is huge. I don't remember if Kobe Durant is a free agent this year, but even if he isn't, now you have, you're obviously going to have Trent McDuffie starting. You're obviously going to have Jalen Watson starting with the money that you gave him. And you also have Quentin Lake playing nickelback as well, that you just signed to a contract extension as well. The Rams really know how to use their money wisely. They're such a well-run organization. And if I were to start a franchise from the ground up right now, and I had to take, a business model or a model of how to run a franchise, I would probably say that the Rams would be at the top of my list because that just the development of the roster. I mean, this is also a team that went like 8 years without a first round pick, and they won a Super Bowl out of it too. They cashed in on what they were able to develop in the day 2, day 3 of the NFL draft. It's not because you're not. I think people are commonly misled, where the NFL is made up mostly of day 3 picks, because you're going to sit here and go, well, Peter, obviously they're made up of day 3 picks because day 3 has the most rounds in the draft, but it's how you develop those day 3 prospects. And it's such an interesting, topic to talk about, because you have the Rams who are so good at it. And then you have someone like the Jets say that really once you hit day 3, almost every one of their not every single year, but every one of their picks is basically a wash at that point. That's how you develop your roster. That's how you're able to go out and spend money on free agents, is developing these guys that are from the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round. And you're able to start them at positions that cost a lot of money. And then you're able to go out and get one of those big free agents at one time. You're able to keep, money in your pocket for, oh, you know what? Like, hey, we need a corner. Our secondary got toasted in the second half of the year. Let's go out and trade for Trent McDuffie and then give him a huge contract extension. Oh, you know what? We still have some money left over. Let's go out and get Jalen Watson on a 3-year, $51 million deal. That's how you're able to do things like that. And I think that's why they're such a well-run organization. Let's talk about the San Francisco 49ers swooping in and getting Mike Evans. I thought that was quite interesting from the from the San Francisco 49ers. I think that's a unbelievable addition for them, because really Brandon Ayuk obviously is not going to be on the San Francisco 49ers anymore in some way, shape, or form. Not only that, you also have quite a thin, receiver room. You're looking at Jawan Jennings, who's turning 30 years old. You're looking at Ricky Pearsall, who has had a few good games in his NFL career, but he hasn't really, cashed in on anything for the most part at this point. You know what I'm saying? Like, you needed someone that's going to establish something on the boundary, and you get Mike Evans signing a 3-year contract. I mean, Mike Evans signing a 3-year contract, if he sees the contract out, essentially takes him to 15 years in the NFL. And I feel like 15 years in the NFL playing at an absurdly high rate year in and year out is, an unbelievable feat. And I think this is a perfect way to kind of end his career. He gets paid. I don't remember what the parameters of the contract were, but either way, he gets paid. That's super solid to see as well. Just a really solid signing for the San Francisco 49ers. Obviously there, you're shoring up your receiving room, and you can't, like I said, you can't knock that at all. So let's take a look at a couple other teams here. I wanted to take a look at let's take a look. Sorry, I'm looking at a couple of comments. Pardon. Bro, been binge watching your draft rankings. Good stuff. Wow. I appreciate that very much. I don't think that people really like, I feel like in the comments, sometimes I could be a little dry because people just don't know my personality, and that's completely fine. But, it means a lot to hear something like that, really, because I always like to keep myself humble and just try to say that, like, I'm just a schmuck with a microphone who just decided to, like, make a YouTube channel one day. And the fact that people even take the time out of their day to listen to any drivel that I come up with is really special to me, and I really appreciate that. Hey, Draft Hub, what's up, my guy? How you doing? How are your Jets doing today? I sleep during the day for work at the graveyard. Just woke up. Hey, man, I feel you, brother. My job here in New York City, I run a lot of rotations. I do a lot of day shift. Yeah, I do a lot of night shift. So I certainly feel you feel like a zombie a lot of the times. Let's go back to the Jets here, because I was talking about them before, but a few people obviously weren't in here when I was talking about them. But I really like what the Jets have done so far today. It's nice to see, because I know in the long run that the Jets aren't going to be nearly as competitive as other teams, but to see these leadership deals, like the day started off great with Minkah Fitzpatrick. I thought that was a fantastic trade. You cannot tell me Minkah Fitzpatrick could have been 40 years old, and even if he played for 1 year and you trade a 7th round pick for him, that's perfect value for me. You can't go wrong with that. A swing at the fences for a 7th round pick, and then you sign him to a 3-year, $40 million contract. I love that. Not only that, Demario Davis, 37 years old or not, still one of the best linebackers in football, in my opinion. Really, really happy about that move as well. Also, you bring him home. This is the 3rd time that Demario Davis is going to be, on the Jets. So that's pretty cool. I hope he retires a Jet. That would be pretty cool. He should retire a Saint, because he had his best years as a New Orleans Saints. But, to each his own. T'Vondre Sweat, the trade really signaled for me that the Jets are moving to a 3-4 defense, because T'Vondre Sweat is, 6'4", 360 pounds. So he's probably going to play nose. You have David Onyemata that's probably going to play in defensive tackle next to Juwan Briggs. So I love that deal as well. Even though it's a 1-year contract, I think Onyemata brings Very, very consistent and solid play from the defensive line position. Joseph Osai, Kingsley Enigbare, again, just kind of reiterating that I think we're going to a 3-4 odd front defense where you're going to have Enigbare. Enigbare is a really nice rotational edge rusher, even for a year at $10 million. And then Osai is a player that doesn't really have a lot of sacks to his name. I think he has 14 and a half sacks in his 4 years in the NFL, but I'm willing to bank on the upside. And at the worst, if you do draft someone like Arvell Reese and you have Will McDonald and Arvell Reese start, and you have Enigbare and Joseph Osai as your rotational edge rushers, that's pretty cool with me. So let's just take a look at these comments yet again here. I did have a question because on your mock draft, you were talking about defensive tackles out of order from your rankings. Was that just more predictive? So with that, it's so like obviously my rankings are different than what I think the defensive tackles bring to the table for certain teams. So, I didn't have Caden McDonald or Lee Hunter drafted in my first round mock this past week. That's because those guys, in my opinion, especially Caden McDonald, are more run controlling 2-down players. So where like you would think maybe the Chicago Bears would need someone like that, a run controlling 2-down player. That's where I think Christian Miller fits in a little bit better because not only is he a fantastic run defender, you also have a player that brings a lot as a pass rusher as well and can be on the field on 3 downs and is an incredibly athletic and long 6'4", 311 pounds. So that's kind of where the drafting out of order takes place for the defensive tackles. It's just a matter of fit for that team. I wish it went the way that my rankings go. The rankings itself are just what I think the player can bring to the table and how he stacks up against the other players in the draft class. And obviously my rankings are going to be different than everyone else's. And that's how it should be. Everyone should have a different preference. Everyone should have a different ranking. That's what makes these videos so interesting to watch and so interesting to compare. But yeah, so that's kind of the way that I do it. I really look at the team, look at the way that the defense is in order, look at, blitz percentages, run stuffing rate, all that kind of stuff. And I try and match the best player to that team. And that's not everyone's cup of tea. Everyone wants to go out and be like, oh, why didn't you draft this player? He's better. True. Maybe in a nutshell, he could be better, but does he fit that team better? And I don't think that's not the way that I draft. I draft for fit more than anything. Some people might draft best player available and a great athlete and go, all right, well, let's just plug him in. It doesn't really work that way sometimes. You know what I'm saying? You could be a great player and you just not fit the defense and you don't really understand the premise of the defense and the way that the defensive coordinator, runs their defense. So that's kind of where I come up with that. Also, assuming you went over Raiders signings today, I did, but I could again if you want, no problem. I think the Raiders have done obviously a fantastic job. Minkah Fitzpatrick is a solid trade. He played slot corner last year for the Fins and can move back to free safety. I just think it's a great move for the Jets just because you need veteran leadership. And that's like the secondary is so young. Brandon Stevens was the big time acquisition for the Jets last year. And he actually played really well down the stretch. But at the beginning of the year, he looked like a terrible signing. But then other than that, you have Quantez Stiggers, who's still a really young player. You have Azareye'h Thomas, who of course is really young. You have Jarvis Brownlee. You have these young corners that, need a little bit more stability on the back end. Malachi Moore is a player that I think is going to blossom into a really nice safety. And now you have, 2 safeties that you could really work with. Andre Cisco was a big swing and a miss for the Jets. That's really what I'm getting at here is I think that these are just really nice veteran leadership presence for this really, really young Jets team. Let's see. Minkah Fitzpatrick, you said, and Minkah Fitzpatrick is a good leader. Exactly. Jets got a steal with the 7th round pick. Yes. On your free agency destination list of all 32 teams, I was wrong about Malik Willis to Miami, but I did get Jalen Phillips to the Panthers signing. Yeah, you did. That was a good call by you as well. And I'll be honest with you that the one free agent deal that I'm happy that I randomly thought was a good fit was the David Edwards one. I didn't see anyone say that David Edwards was going to go to the Saints. And then when I saw that deal happen, I was like, wow, I was actually right. I'm usually never right about anything. So especially when it comes to those videos. So I was actually pretty surprised that actually materialized. But yeah, Jalen Phillips. Now I will say one thing. Let's talk about the Carolina Panthers for a second. I'm not entirely in love with the Jalen Phillips signing. I like the Jalen Phillips signing if it wasn't for 4 years, $120 million. Now, don't get me wrong. I know that when he's healthy, he's very good, but we're also looking at a player that has had 2 really significant season-ending injuries as well. So I just want to keep that in the back of the mind. 4 years, $120 million. Now, granted, the Panthers at number 19 in the draft are kind of in that weird nebulous of it's going to be very difficult for them to get a premier edge rusher at 19. So I understand the overpay for Phillips, especially if you got the money. If you got to overpay for an edge rusher or any position for that matter, if you got the money that current year, you go out and you spend it. That's fine. I mean, maybe in a couple years' time, it's not going to look great, but there's a lot. I would say the majority of free agent signings really don't pan out. So yeah, all right, you overpaid a little bit for Jalen Phillips, but if he turns into a Pro Bowler, then the deal doesn't look so bad. I'm just a little worried about it because of the overall injury history. But other than that, I think he's a fine player when he's healthy, and I think it's obviously a massive need for the Carolina Panthers there. Let's see what else we have here. Yeah, the Saints, David Edwards, that was a good call. Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I don't know if that was a call. I just thought it was a perfect fit. That the Dylan Radins was going to be a free agent. He's also terrible. So I knew that the New Orleans Saints needed an upgrade on the interior. And I thought David Edwards was a player that nearly wasn't getting talked about enough as one of the more elite interior offensive line, free agents out there. So I figured it would be a good under the radar fit. And they had quite a bit of money to spend, much more than they're used to. So let's see. Too much injury for that cost? Absolutely. Minute Mania to Arizona. I was going to say, what's Minute Mania? Minshew Mania to Arizona. That's pretty cool. That is pretty cool, actually. So I guess he'll probably back up Jacoby Brissett because that kind of seems like. And you know what? Honestly, Jacoby Brissett balled out last year for the Cardinals because I said that Jacoby Brissett was playing fuck it football essentially because it was like, he's been around so many different locker rooms and he's just one of the best backups in football. And he's a guy that is going to get a job regardless of what he goes out there and does. So he was just playing fucking football. He was a guy that was just like, you know what? I'm dropping back. What did he do? He had the NFL record for completions in a game. He was just dropping back and throwing dimes all over the field because he didn't care. So honestly, if the Cardinals go into the season with him as the starter, maybe he should play more fucking football because he looked really good. That was probably the best he's looked in his entire career at the quarterback position. So, why not? Why not do it like that? Yeah, Minshew Mania is interesting there. I thought the Panthers overpaid for Jalen Phillips, but I assume that they will double dip at pass rusher. Probably. I would assume that they will. They have to, honestly. So I think that's a good one there. Yeah, Minshew to the Cards 1 year, $8.25 million. I feel bad for the Cards. That division is yeah, that's really tough. I mean, if you look, this past year was a perfect microcosm of just how screwed the Arizona Cardinals are because you have the Seahawks who won the Super Bowl, you have the Rams who made it to the NFC Championship game, and then you have the 49ers that lost in the divisional, right? To the Seattle Seahawks. So, that's insurmountable, especially coming from a team that now has no quarterback. Now, I think that the Cardinals have to just kind of stay in their lane with a new regime. You kind of have to build from the ground up, but there's a lot of pieces in place that are great. Paris Johnson Jr. is your blindside blocker of the future. That's a great start. Running back position is a little now that they have Tyler Algier. They still have Trey Benson if he could stay healthy, and they have one more year of James Conner. That's all right. Wide receiver, great position in my opinion. At weapons, really all the way around. You have Trey McBride. You have Tip Ryman if he comes back from his injury. That's a great blocking tight end as well. Trey McBride's probably overtaken Brock Bowers as the best tight end in football, I would say, after what he did this past year. Wide receiver Marvin Harrison Jr. hopefully kind of blossoms in year number 3. And then you have, Michael Wilson, who had a fantastic end of the year. So on the defensive side, it's a little bit of a different story. Walter Nolan is a great player to build around as well. And it also seems like, I'm drawing a blank on the linebacker's name. I'm drawing a blank on his name, but he was a mid-round pick. He looks like he's going to be solid for the future. The corners are young. They're good enough. They still have Budda Baker. There's a lot to like. If you get a decent quarterback in there, I think the Cardinals actually have a decent shot of making the wild card, maybe not next year, but maybe the year after. Sorry, I missed it, but man, what about Tyler Linderbaum deal? That was insane. Yeah, let's go back to the Raiders just because I said that I would. I just want to talk about the Raiders one more time because uh, Linderbaum, I think it was the first thing I actually talked about was the Tyler Linderbaum deal. 3 years, $81 million is to me sensational business for both parties because from the Linderbaum aspect, you get a 25-year-old center, maybe turning 26 by the time that the season starts, who at the end of this contract is going to be 29 years old and still is probably going to be, at the very worst, a top 3 center in football. So you're going to command another huge contract again. It's a brilliant piece of business from himself and his agent. And then you look at the other aspect of it. I'll break down because that was super early on in the stream. I'll break it down on the offensive line side. So let's do this. Let's play this game. So we also have pick number 1 and we have pick 14. We already know that pick number 1 is going to be Fernando Mendoza. So that leaves pick number 14. So on the left side, you're going to have Colton Miller. You're going to have Jackson Powers Johnson as your left guard. You're going to have Tyler Linderbaum now as your center. On the right side, you're going to have Caleb Rogers, who was fantastic in my opinion as a rookie. And then now you have whatever you want at right tackle. At 14, you could sit there and you could take Spencer Fano at number 14, and then you have a top 5 offensive line in football. Or you could take a weapon at 14, and then you could put either DJ Glaze or Charles Grant at the right tackle position. Or you can go out and get someone like Braden Smith, who is a little injury prone, but is a really, really good right tackle when he's healthy, and he's still only 30 years old. So there's a multitude of different ways that the Raiders win in this situation because right away you're getting way more protection for your new franchise number 1 asset in Fernando Mendoza. And then you could take another offensive lineman with number 14, or you could take a weapon, or you could go defense, whatever you want to do. But I think the Raiders have done a really, really good job so far today. I really like what they've done. Really, since the Max Crosby trade, I feel like they've kind of stayed in their own lane. I love the Eric Stokes re-signing, a player that really reinvented himself in Vegas and was quietly one of the most consistent cornerbacks in the league for the Raiders last year. So I love that. Taron Johnson's a really nice trade for them. Jalen Nailor is a really solid wide receiver to add to that room as well. I think they've done a very, very good job so far this year, this off-season, free agency period, whatever you want to call it. Yes, I was thinking of Cody Simon. Thank you. I was thinking of Cody Simon. I couldn't think of it for the life of me. Does the Nailor signing take wide receiver off the board at 14? And if so, is there a true nose tackle or defensive player worth there? McCoy's injuries scare me. I agree with you on that McCoy's injuries certainly do scare me. So I want to break this down. I don't think signing Jalen Nailor to that contract rules out a wide receiver at 14, because if you go across the board, you got 4 wide receivers right now. Your top 4, you're looking at Trey Tucker's probably going to be your number 1 right now if this is the season started. You got Trey Tucker, you have Jack Bech, you have Dante Thornton, and you have Jalen Nailor. So I'm assuming that Jalen Nailor, with the contract that he signed, is probably still going to be your wide receiver 3. I absolutely don't think it rules out drafting a wide receiver at 14. What if Jordan Tyson is on the board at 14? There's your number 1 right there. And I would, to be quite honest, I think Spencer Fano is great. I think Jordan Tyson's great. If the rest of your offensive line as good as the Raiders is, I'm kind of going to leave either DJ Glaze or Charles Grant at right tackle, and I'm going to take Jordan Tyson at number 14. I think that it's. I know I didn't do it in my mock draft because I had a certain vision that I kind of wanted to get the point across with, and I also, that was before free agency, so I didn't know that they were going to sign Jalen Nailor either. But I was kind of hoping for maybe a little bit more of a big time swing at the wide receiver position. Maybe they went out and traded, now that they have all this extra draft capital, maybe they traded for AJ Brown or something like that. But yeah, I absolutely don't think it rules that out. And then to your last point with the defensive line, there's absolutely I wouldn't call a nose tackle archetype, but at 14, if Caleb Banks is on the board, you have to consider it as well. 6'6", 327 pounds, 35-plus-inch arms, a little bit injury prone last year, a little bit of an older prospect. He's going to be 24 years old at the time of the rookie season. But my God, I've never seen a 6'6", 327-pound man move like that before. He's going to be, I keep saying it, I think Caleb Banks is going to be a player that gets a GM fired one of these days just because of, all the intangibles are there. The only thing that he's missing is the ability and consistency to stay healthy. So if he can stay healthy, I do think that, that would kind of be the pick at 14 if he is there. But I do certainly doubt that he will be there. Tyson's injuries scare me. they scare you too. I like Lemon. Yeah, true. That is the big risk that you're kind of willing to take. Pardon me, with Jordan Tyson. That's the risk that I'm willing to take. Personally, me, I'd rather take a risk on a wide receiver that has an injury history than a corner that has an injury history, because I feel like for a wide receiver, you have way more ways to work yourself open than just speed and overall athleticism. Whereas a corner, if you lose your speed or your athleticism, it's very difficult for you to really make any type of impact at the NFL level. So if I were to go with a player out of those two guys that injury history, is taken into consideration, I'd still take Jordan Tyson. But I would have to say that Caleb Banks is probably your best bet at the defensive tackle position at number 14 if he's there. I think that would be a brilliant move for the Raiders. But since you're taking since you're taking a quarterback at number 1 overall, I'd like to either pair him with a weapon or get him that much more protection on the offensive line. So let's take a look at some of the other teams that we haven't looked at just yet. We have looked at basically all these teams here too. We talked about these teams. Chargers. Wow, we actually talked about a good few. I'm surprised that we've talked about all these teams. Let's talk about New Orleans, because I didn't get a chance to. I touched upon it. I didn't get a chance to actually talk about them for the most part. But yeah, Travis Etienne, I love that. I guess that signals the end of Alvin Kamara. Either that or he, just takes, a back seat to Etienne, because you're not paying Etienne 4 years, $52 million to be, a backup. He's going to, obviously be the guy. They also have Audric Estime. They have Devin Neal. So I really do think that Alvin Kamara is probably on the outs if I had to guess, but I love that. I love that move. I also love the David Edwards one. We just talked about that again as well. I think David Edwards going to the Saints is a great move for them. John Ridgeway re-signing with them as well, I think is a really solid option. And then they re-signed Julian Blackmon as well. I'd love to see them, now that they lost Alontae Taylor, I would really love to see them potentially try and get some kind of corner. So, maybe that could happen as well. But I'm not going to stress it out. I do think that the Saints are in a good spot right now. And with Tyler Shuck and his development, I do think that that's they're in a good spot right now for the most part. But let's see what else we could talk about here. Oh, we could talk about the Buccaneers as well. Kenneth Gainwell, really nice. I guess that signals the end of Rachaad White in Tampa Bay. Cade Otton is a nice re-signing, and Alex Anzalone is a really nice 2-year deal as well. That won't stop that, in my opinion. Doesn't seem like it will stop the Tampa Bay Buccaneers from taking a linebacker early, because it is a 2-year contract, and Anzalone is already 32 years old. So I don't think that will stop them from taking someone in maybe even the first or second round, depending on who is there. But also, I think that's a very, very solid option for them. I think the Buccaneers are doing a really good job of kind of filling in some gaps, and not only just filling in gaps, just, kind of, strengthening their roster. Obviously, losing Mike Evans is huge, but I still think that they are kind of sort of winning, for the most part today. Tyson's injuries scare me. I said that already. Gotta hop off. Thanks for answering questions. Looking forward to new videos. Appreciate you, man. Thank you for sticking around. And I'm really happy that you tune in. Thank you so much, kid. Can't thank you enough for your continued support. But yeah, let's talk about some other teams here. If I haven't talked about them already, I think we've kind of touched upon basically every single team for the most part. I haven't really touched upon Detroit or Chicago. I'd like to talk about Detroit here just briefly for the most part. Oh, they did. Oh, so I missed this. The Packers did re-sign Sean Ryan. So that's a really nice move for them as well. Really nice. So that, I guess, also signifies the end of Rasheed Walker in Green Bay. But that's a really nice re-signing for them. He's a player that has versatility all over the offensive line. I think that's a really, really strong move for them. So getting Juice Scruggs in the trade is nice, because Scruggs is a player that could play center. He could play both guard positions. And then signing Cade Mays was just really nice. Yes, they did cut Elton Jenkins as well. So what is the retooling going to look like of the offensive line for the Green Bay Packers? Because you have Sean Ryan now. They cut Jenkins. Rasheed Walker's probably gone as well. So, they drafted Anthony Belton last year, who did start on the interior. They also have Aaron Banks. So they have Zach Tom. All right, I guess it'll kind of work out for the best. They'll probably put Sean Ryan at left tackle or something along those lines. I don't know what they're thinking of, but they still have good pieces on the offensive line. So um yeah, that's that's a good point too. I forgot that and I mentioned it in this stream too, that they cut Elton Jenkins. But yeah, Cade Mays is for me crazy to say potentially, but maybe the signing of the day at 3 years, $25 million. I think Cade Mays brings so much value to the Detroit Lions, and the Lions really do know how to squeeze a lot of effort out of effort and overall ability out of their interior offensive linemen. So pairing Cade Mays with Christian Mahogany and then Tate Ratledge, I think is kind of, makes it that much easier. And then you could potentially target like a Caden Proctor, a Caleb Lomu, or even a Spencer Fano at number 17 in the draft because, Penei Sewell is an all-pro at right tackle in the NFL, but let's not forget he was an all-American at Oregon at left tackle. So he definitely has the overall ability to play left tackle at the NFL, even though he's just so athletic and he's so good on the right side. It seems crazy to want to move, a all-pro right tackle to the left side, but I think it's a move that it kind of seems like the Detroit Lions were willing to make because they let Taylor Decker go like that too. But yeah, let's see. The Lions also signed Larry Borum. It's not up there, and they got him about an hour ago. So let's see. Borum is cool. I don't really think that really does anything for me. That's someone that could probably spot start. I don't think that's your end all be all in terms of starting. That's just really good depth. And like I mentioned before, I think overall, I think that offensive line depth is incredibly volatile at the NFL level. You need big men all over the offensive line. It doesn't matter where they are. You need offensive linemen. Rumor has it that Cade Mays fired his agent because like 15 minutes later, Tyler Linderbaum deal came through. Yeah, honestly, I mean, Cade Mays is still so good. So to see him get, what is that? Almost $60 million less than Tyler Linderbaum, I would kind of sit there and be like, yo, what the hell, dude? Same years, way less valuation. That's kind of crazy. But Mays is a player also you have to take into consideration. Mays was a player that was drafted a lot later in the draft as well. He's a player that has sort of kind of slowly come into his own, where Linderbaum was kind of like one of, if not the best centers in football, kind of sort of right away. So, and he was the big ticket item. So, I'm sure that if Linderbaum signed with the Detroit Lions, I'm sure that the Raiders would have went out and spent as much money as Cade Mays would have pleased to bring him into town. So I guess it all depends on the availability. But yeah, that is kind of funny. That would be funny if right after signing a $25 million contract, you're like, you know what? I don't need you. You're gone. That guy got $81 million. Come on, man. What are you doing? But yeah, no, that's yeah, a nice solid moves for the Lions here. I think kind of staying under the radar and just drafting your talent for the most part at this point is kind of sort of good. I like what the Bears have done so far. The Garrett Bradbury trade seemed more of like a panic to me than anything, but regardless, he played some pretty good ball for the Patriots down the stretch. So, giving up a 5th round pick next year for him, that's kind of cool. Free agents. Oh, sorry. I thought it was going to be a new update. It was just the Tua Tagovailoa thing yet again. But so Neville Gallimore is a player that I'll be quite honest with you guys, I didn't even know was still in the NFL. So I guess that's a good signing at that point. Devin Bush, really nice. So fun fact about DeMarco Jackson. I couldn't wait to talk about this when I saw the deal come in. Really happy for DeMarco Jackson because not only did he ball out in like a reserved role this past year for the Chicago Bears, he was also the first college athlete I ever interviewed way back in, what was that? The 2022 NFL draft cycle. I reached out to a bunch of athletes, and rightfully so. My Twitter account was not big at the time, and it still isn't big now because I've changed it so many different times. But it was not big at the time, and I DM'd so many athletes that they were going to shut down my Twitter. They were like, yo, dude, you're doing this every day. Stop. No one's going to answer. And then, off-ball linebacker DeMarco Jackson from Appalachian State answered my DM, and we had a really nice 37-minute long conversation. It might still be up on my old channel. It might still be up there. And he was a great guy, really, really nice. We talked for about 30 minutes before, we talked for about 30 minutes after. He's a fantastic player, a fantastic person. I'm really glad that he not only carved out a nice career for himself up until this point as a fifth round linebacker from Appalachian State. He was drafted by the New Orleans Saints. He played mostly special teams for them and then played a lot of special teams for the Bears. But then when he finally stepped into a starting role this year due to injury, he actually played really well, and they rewarded him with a 2 year, $7.5 million contract, and with the valuation of 10.5. Now I'm getting a something coming across my phone here that says that D Alford is signing with the Bills, 3 years, 21 million. And I also saw that Jermaine Illuminor is going to re-sign with the Giants on a 3 year, $39 million deal. And that's a very nice move for the Giants. That kind of solidifies the right side of their offensive line. Yet again, I do think they need to get a little bit better on the interior. But getting back to the Bears, and I love Kobe Bryant because Kevin Byard is a free agent. Jaquan Brisker is a free agent. This basically tells me that the Chicago Bears are not willing to pay whatever the price was for Jaquan Brisker. But seeing that Kobe Bryant signed a 3 year, $40 million contract kind of makes me think that, Brisker probably wants at 27 years old, he probably wants a contract into his 30s, and he probably wants more than $15 million a year at that point. And I don't really think the Bears are willing to do that, but you get a Super Bowl champion in Kobe Bryant, who also was also a corner opposite of Sauce Gardner at Cincinnati, and then carved out a really nice role for himself as a safety with the Seattle Seahawks after, kind of getting moved back there this past year. So Kobe Bryant gets paid. Very, very nice deal for him as well. And I don't really think I have to touch on any other teams. I'm going to look at the other ones again. We've kind of touched on really everyone for the most part. I haven't talked about Seattle, but there's really nothing to talk about with Seattle for the most part. Yeah, I think that's probably going to wrap it up here for this live stream. I'm going to, depending on my work schedule, the next couple of days, I am going to try and get back on here and talk more about free agency as the days go on, because obviously there are so many free agents that still haven't signed. Through the night, there are going to be free agents that are going to be signing. So, there's certain things that we have to get through, of course, but I just really wanted to get on here after work today and talk about some of the big time free agents with you guys. And I really, really do appreciate you guys sticking around, interacting with me. And if I do go live again tomorrow, I hope to see a lot of you guys again. So let's wrap this one up here for now. So thank you all for tuning in, and I hope to see you tomorrow again. And I hope your favorite team signs some guys that you want to see.